Gotta forget the last one. Let's move on to the Pitt Panthers. Talking Miami football here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, here on our Miami channel. So please lock it in, subscribe, like these videos, share them out on social media as well. We got the Wholesome One in the house to talk Miami football with the Panthers coming to town in a matchup of what is typically ACC Coastal Division teams. But of course, it's just one conference this year, and Miami trying to bounce back at 3-1. Wholesome One, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Working my way to this degree, so I'm pretty excited about that. Talk about degrees. It's 32 degrees up here in Fargo, North Dakota today, hence the hoodie for today. But, man, you got a team coming down to Miami that's been heartbroken in a couple games. I've watched a little bit of both games, and you see a team that's aggressive on both sides of the ball. So we'll get into a couple of their players today, and we'll be excited about what we're going to bring out on Saturday afternoon, right at noon kickoff. Early game for the Canes, huh?
I think because the Panthers are located in Pittsburgh, they have a deep and very prestigious football history. For those of who maybe out there have only been watching college football for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, something in that range. If you go back into the 70s and 80s, we're talking Dan Marino, Tony Dorsett, Hugh Green, Heisman Trophy winners, national championships.
Shady McCoy, Aaron Donald,
and Larry Fitzgerald.
Larry Fitzgerald, yeah.
There you go. Certainly, they still churn out some NFL players on a fairly regular basis now. James Conner with the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course. All right, so talking Pitt right now, as we mentioned just a couple nights ago, just as we just brushed upon this 3-2 football team, they've got a fourth-year starting quarterback in Kenny Pickett. They've got certainly a defense that was top 5 in the nation in yards per play against last year, led the nation in sacks last year. Sometimes that sack total isn't necessarily relevant, but when you led the nation in sacks last year, then you turn around and through 5 games, they're leading the nation in sacks again this year. So they get after the quarterback, Wholesome One.
Oh, yeah. I mean, us human beings, we are continuously what we do. You know, we are, if they are anything, they're very aggressive in the fronts. And it's to the point where Coach Narduzzi, he has a way of his front four just getting after the QB and stopping the run. So he doesn't really blitz a lot, which works in favor for Miami, but I do expect him to, because for 4 games straight, the Miami Hurricanes have shown if you send a delayed blitz, you will get home. So we got to fix that issue amongst all other stuff going on with our program right now, especially in the pass protection communication between tight ends and O-line, running back and O-line, whatever. We got to get that fixed because it's been a problem. And we're going up against the sack leader. I think it's number 91 coming off the edge. He's a bad man. He is a bad man. And our offensive tackles have been a little shaky. I mean, we've seen last week we saw 3 offensive tackles, so therefore that means somebody had to be pulled. Zion Nelson played sometimes at left, sometimes at right. Jared Williams was over there. Sometimes he got yanked. John Campbell at left. Sometimes he got yanked. So, and like I said, I don't want to overanalyze that game last week. It was just we ran into a buzzsaw. So we got to move forward. But looking at Pitt, man, you talk about the past of Pittsburgh Panthers. This team looks a little different than what you would expect the Pitt Panthers to look like. And what I mean is they're coming out in 3-4 wide set, and it's like, wow, you know, the Big 12 is kind of taking over all of college football. You know, the way that they play. I mean, the funny one of the comments was that the Big 12 moved to the east, and the Pac-12 also moved to the east, turning the Pac-12 into the Big 12. Now the Big 12 is turning the SEC into the Big 12. You know, everybody's spreading it out and attacking down the field. And as a defensive guy, even we know a great offense always beats a great defense. And it hurts to say that out loud as a defensive guy, but it's just true. If you got the best offensive line, the best QB, the best running back, and the best receiving core and the best tight end in college football or in football period, it's just nothing that you can do against a team like that. And does Pitt have that? No. But they're a very well-coached team. They run Coach Whipple's offense pretty well. I mean, is it second or third year, Mark, that he's been an offensive coordinator? Do you know off the top of your head? I know it's at least the second year.
Yeah.
Because he coached against us last year.
Yeah.
when he was in this team. And the weather played a part in the game. They played a little bit of a different scheme than what they usually run. Had a lot more run heavy and double tied and a fullback in the game. But you watch every game up until now, they got 3 wide with a tight end, 4 wide with a running back in the backfield. They are airing it out and attacking down the football field. And I tell you what, Pickett will never get him back for what he did to us in 2017. He'll always go down in the history books for Pitt based on what he did against us and beating the undefeated Miami as a freshman. But we've gotten him back every year since then. So we got to close it out, making him 1-3 versus the Canes. Now, their running back Davis, 24 carries, so half the carries of Cam Harris, but very close in yards, 235 yards on the ground, 3 rush touchdowns. He runs very aggressive. He's not the easiest to bring down in open space. He can shake and bake, but he can also get some tough yardage. And they could attack deep down the field. I mean, if you watch NC State, they were airing it out. I mean, deep posts, bombs, seams, just throwing it down the football field. And that kind of high-scoring shootout between the two, NC State and Pitt. And their wide receiver Turner, 18 receptions for 331 yards and a touchdown. You know, I think our leading wide receiver doesn't even have 150 yards. So that should tell you something about how they are attacking down the field and getting the ball down the field. So do I think it's going to be a good game? Absolutely. I think it's contrasting styles to a certain extent because Syracuse, they beat Syracuse 21-10. They beat Louisville 23-20 and lost 29-30. So they're averaging about 25 points per game. And we were averaging 42. So I think that they're still going to hit their 20-25 or 27 mark against us. But hopefully we can get to that 31-35 mark for our offense. And it might be a mini shootout down in Miami Gardens.
So I'm not coming up with the previous offensive coordinator at Pitt. I know I'm going to blank on his name, and I could come up with it at any time. But the transformation that they made on offense, Wholesome One, is that the offensive coordinator that was there in 2017 when Kenny Pickett made that first start at Pitt, they made a 1-year reversal from being one of the top 5 teams in the nation in fewest pass attempts. So other than the service academies, the 3 service academies that never throw it 5 or 6 times a game, they were like bottom 2 or 3 in the nation in pass attempts. To the very next year, same quarterback. It's not like they transformed personnel. Same quarterback in Kenny Pickett. Top 5 pass attempts in the nation. Went from bottom 5 to top 5 in the nation in pass attempts from, I believe, either 17 to 18 or 18 to 19.
Whoa.
So really turned it over. Yep.
That's a big turnaround. I mean, the game has a way of evolving, and it seems as though the offenses have evolved a little faster than defenses. And the only thing we've done on the defensive side of the ball to kind of match that up is, I mean, the 4-2-5 has been around, but it was basically a Big 12 defense. Now it's kind of spread national. You know, people used to just say nickel or dime. Now they're like, hey, sit in the 4-2-5 base and maybe switch to a nickel from a dime from the 4-2-5. So defenses have tried to combat that. And I think one of the other things we all had to understand is you're going to give up yards. You know, people are going to make their yards. People are going to get their first downs. People are going to score. It's being able to bottle it up to a certain extent and score more than they will is where the big issue in today's college football. Because the days of watching Alabama LSU and the final score is 9-6 is that far away. That probably will never come back ever again, based on how we're rolling in college football or in football, period.
Now, I'm going to give us one exception here, Wholesome One, at least through 3 games, and they haven't played a great offense, but they've played 3 capable teams, like top 30 teams. Georgia, I just did a video, posted it previewing the Georgia-Alabama, and I noted some stats from the Georgia Bulldogs giving up just 2 field goals to Auburn. They only gave up about 215 yards in that game. Arkansas only hit them for about 215 yards. in that game and only scored one meaningless touchdown when the game was over. It didn't matter. Tennessee hit him for two really big long pass plays in the first half. The other touchdown was a gift on special teams, so it wasn't given up by the Georgia defense, but they held Tennessee to negative 1 yard rushing and about 215 yards. And they held all three teams to just a smidge over 50% completion percentage. Now they run into Alabama this week, and certainly they're going to give up more than that. But it'll be interesting to see if Georgia can keep up this pace. But they're the only team playing like that. Clemson did last week. 1 week.
I thought you were going to let that one go. I was like, I'm not going to mention it. If he says it, then we'll let it go.
But,
good God.
There's only a couple teams out there playing like that on defense right now. Ronan, we appreciate it. You're always here for us. Thank you so much. It is so much appreciated. Ronan says, closing in on the century. Mark, keep up the great work. Glad to have Wholesome along for the ride again. Time to bounce back this weekend. Go Canes. And if you've noticed, what we've done is the Wholesome One was with us earlier in the week to look at Clemson, look ahead to Pitt to a certain extent, did a tremendous breakdown, and I've got him posted right here. The overhaul at wide receiver that he had been asked a question about regarding personnel at wide receiver, so we went through that. Just in regards to the Rhett Lashley offense breaking down against Clemson, some miscommunication there and possible lack of preparation. There's just a slew of videos that I carved up from the conversation live earlier in the week. So check out those videos right here on the Miami channel. Kevin Howard on our live chat, and I want to give a quick recognition from everybody jumping on here early. George, glad that you liked and said to everyone, got to like the video. Ian as well. Albert Martinez, D. Nice, Judge Juno, good to see you as always. Again, Ronan, Kevin, Hurricane Speed Jr. So Kevin is saying, shoot, the live chat jumped on me there. Kevin says, See, as soon as somebody makes a comment, it just flies on me. All right. Going back to the officiating, it's also hard to have to beat the referees every week, too. So he's commenting on that. Scorpio Kane just need the O-line to play with attitude and do their assignments and nothing extra, just your assignments.
You know, that happens a lot. I don't really I kind of iffy with that type of statement because I think there has to be a level of aggression and want to. I mean, let's look at that offensive guard. When Georgia this past weekend, was it Tennessee they played? I think, yeah, Tennessee.
Yes.
And so I don't know if it was a QB or the running back, but there was a fumble that happened. And this offensive guard just happens to be making a beeline.
How that play?
And trailing the play. And every big man got up, including like, yeah, like, go. You know, he gets over there, the fumble. He catches it before it even hits the ground and stumbles and jiggles for a couple yards. Like, you know, but that doesn't happen if he doesn't trail the play like he's supposed to. If he just does his job, he blocks his man and watches the play, jogs up and gets in the huddle and does it. But he did a little more, and it resulted in solidifying a win. Because, I mean, it was a turning point in that game to where Tennessee falls on that ball, they might have a chance. Now, the Georgia defense was just playing on a historic level that game. I mean, 3 strip sacks, crazy, like, touchdown came out of the turnover. But the reason why I kind of push back on that narrative sometimes is because people just think you're lining up. You know, Bill Belichick says this all the time, so people think that that's what you're supposed to do. Just do your job, don't care about anything else, and do what you're supposed to do. That's not always true. What I say is do your job to a level that it allows you to create an individual play and make an individual play. What that means is play with your hair on fire. Make sure you check off the box of, if I'm a contained DN, it never went my way. But that doesn't mean if the running back cuts to the other side that I just sit here and say, Coach, I contain my side. That's on the other guy. No, you trail and you never know. If we force a fumble, you could be the one to fall on the ball. Why? Because you kept following the play and trailing the play. So we got to be careful with saying that. I understand it to a certain extent, and a lot of coaches use that narrative. But for me, I really don't like that. because it allows this sense of comfort, and just doing your job isn't always enough.
Wholesome One, we're going to hit another narrative here that you can either take off on if it's relevant or just shut it down, because there was a lot of disdain about the officiating on Saturday night against Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got Ronan as well jumping in here with a question, and there's a ton of people talking about officiating as they have since the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Wholesome One, am I just looking at things with orange and green tinted glasses, or are the Canes getting very few holding calls in our favor when on defense?
I am going to accept that, because yes, and I understand our anger towards it, but I challenge you to think about it like this, people who have that viewpoint. If you happen to be a fan of another team, there's some games where you will feel that exact same way. Okay. Yes, the Louisville game was egregious. Like it's about 6 clips of people literally getting yanked to the ground, or, one of our DNs working a rip move. And even you talked about, like, yeah, there were some egregious non-calls. But what we have to understand is everyone feels that way. Everyone feels like they don't get those calls, and when it doesn't go their way, they try to use that as a narrative as to why they lost the game. Are there some game-changing penalties that have happened in the history of college football? Absolutely. Are there some that us Miami Hurricanes still probably will never get over? Absolutely. Did that really change the game last week, Saturday? No. We ran up into a buzzsaw and a true program that's 10 years ahead of where we are. That's what happened on Saturday. But I do understand when it comes to the holding, when it comes to PI, when it comes to some of those things, it's such a reactionary call that when you look back, it always looks like it should have been a call that didn't happen. So I can understand why people get very angry at it. But for me, as a former defensive lineman, there's holding on every play. You got to learn how to disengage and force them to make that call. Mark, I got to be right back, okay?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I want to let everyone know out there that, we get tons of comments to the edited videos in addition to what you give us here in the live chat. So I see a ton of questions. I see a ton of comments here that I need to address. So I will get to those as soon as I possibly can. A lot of people calling me out for certain things. So I want to be able to address these, and I don't mind that at all. So we'll get to those very soon. All right, let's get through this. David, it's great to see you from Germany. I apologize, but I have a cousin that graduated from Pitt. Go Panthers. Great to see Albert Martinez here. LeBrent as well. Let's see some other names for the first time in here. Got Demetrius. Great to see you here. Want to let everyone know that as well tonight, if you're looking for Cam Underwood and his analysis, he's going to join me on the main channel, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, on the main channel tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern time, Cam Underwood, State of the U, live. And we will break down, of course, the Pitt game, look back at Clemson, because that will be the first and only time that Cam will have a chance to discuss the Clemson game. All right. Edwin's channel, Army Veteran 88. Do you think Dabo would go pro and Trevor if he got the right contract lined up for him? Well, Trevor Lawrence is going to go pro. Dabo Sweeney, I don't know. He's not given any indication to wanting to be a professional football coach. But at the same time, I'm not in the man's head, between his ears. Only he knows, only the people that he talks to. Great to see Beard God Kell. Got Martin on the line. Corporate. Well, I got away from the corporate is what I did, Martin. Actually, it's the reversal. I got away from the corporate. I'm done with the corporate. I left the corporate. So that's what's going on here. This is full-time, full throttle all the time. Why is everyone using the term Live Squad coming from Live Squad 305? Because it's the Live Squad. We're live. We appreciate you joining us. And if you missed any of it, then you got to be part of the Rewatch Squad and the Live Squad at the same time, and you go back to see what you missed. The Wholesome One, we hope everything's okay, but he had to step off, hopefully just for a few minutes. And again, we hope everything is good. I see you, Ronan. And David lets everyone know, please hit the like button. Our situation here is we're going full throttle all the time, full time here, and the Ohio State channel and Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, my main channel. And we need as much support as possible because this is all of it. So check out the videos. I join Pigskin Pete on his channel every Monday at noon Eastern time for college football coast to coast. And certainly, if you want to leave any comments or questions in the live chat, I will address them. We also have a Patreon page. Please join us there. I will be dropping 2 special videos there on Patreon today. One is Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. So any people that love wagering on the games, got to check us out with Steve Merrill from ProSportsInfo.com on Patreon. Just sign up right there. He gives us his 3-pack for the week, plus an off-the-radar game. So insight on 4 college football games this week: Pitt, Miami, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, with Miami close to a 14-point favorite against Pitt. Tennessee, a 6-point pick against Kentucky by Vegas, and Alabama, the line dropped from 6 to 4.5 when the news about Nick Saban came out. And Steve also gave us an off-the-radar selection. So again, join us on Patreon for exclusive content, including Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. And I am also going to be delivering a little bit later today a very direct and personal message to our patrons on our Voice of College Football community. Mr. HD, so you think we bounce back against Pitt, Mark? Well, I think that has to do with the leadership in the locker room. I think that's basically a situation in which that's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal where a team loses a tough one that they expected to compete more closely, that you can expect to bounce back. Is it up to the leadership in the locker room? That's where I think that question lies. It doesn't lie with me. It lies with the leadership on the team and the direction of the coaching staff to be able to get these players in the right mindset that they just came off a difficult loss. They expected to be closer to Clemson than that, but they can't leave it all right there. So you give them proper perspective. You give them proper perspective that you take that seriously, that you weren't good enough in the moment. So we got work to do, but you don't smash their heads down into it, because you let them know we've accomplished a lot thus far. We're in good shape. It's only one game. Got the whole season in front of us. Let's get laser focused and attack the Pitt Panthers. Yeah, Wholesome One.
Yeah, I'm back. I had a delivery come in, so I had to step over. And
no worries.
You know, when they come in, you got to sign the paper, and yes, this is me. Yes, this is me. And then while I'm out there, somebody comes by and asks for the 2020 consensus. So I had to answer those questions too. It's like, all right, thanks. Yeah, Mark will understand these 8 minutes that you guys want to ask me these questions.
I'm on here talking all the time, so I better be used to it.
2020 consensus. Well, at least I'll be counted this time, so that's okay. Anyway, man, I tell you, I look at this game, Mark, and I see similarities in the two teams. I just think one has the athletes, and we have to see about the coaching. The other one has the coaching and some solid athletes. Like Pitt they don't have 1960 skill position players. They got a pretty good, team. And I genuinely think that this team is learned not to take anyone not serious. Because you look at Louisville, who turned out to be a pretty bad team. Well, if we just showed up and didn't take them serious, that game would have been a lot closer. Tallahassee, they didn't have their head coach. I think if they did have their head coach, that game was a lot closer because he would have been able to make some adjustments right then and there, mid-game, as opposed to get on a, a tablet at halftime and try to give a speech from, a couple miles away. But we're going to have a good game, man. It's going to be two teams that have something to prove, both coming off losses. One being humble, the other one kind of a heartbreaker. So it's not like they're just going to show up and think that we're going to roll our helmet out and blow them out by 35. And if we do, we would have earned it. Even coming from our leaders this week, De'Aaron King and light-skinned warrior Bubba Bolden both said we had our two best padded practices of the season. Back-to-back. As far as Tuesday and Wednesday were back-to-back great practices. So in my opinion, what that means is the leadership and these coaches understand there's still plenty to go forward with. I mean, look at TCU. TCU beats Texas one week, obviously started smelling themselves and lose to K-State the very next week. So the game is a whole bunch of 11 seasons in one. What you did last week has little to know about, nothing to do with what you're going to do this next week. Or 2 weeks after that, or a month after that. You could be on a 7-game win streak and lose to FIU. If you don't show up and play your best game. Now, sometimes people's programs are just to a different level, Mark, where Clemson could probably play one of their worst games and still win by 10 or 14 points against a solid team. We're not there yet. And it takes years to build that type of program to where you could play a D- game and still win by 10 against a B or C team. Takes a long time.
Take the results in college football over any span of time. You can go for the last year, the last 5 years, last 10 years, last 15 years. And take out about 3 to 5 teams at the top because they're extremely consistent in their excellence. And we know who those programs are.
Right.
Okay, take them out. And then you take out the teams like a Rutgers that has just been a complete joke and completely just outmanned in the Big Ten. They've lost 21 consecutive games, and they lose most of those games by literally 50 points. And Kansas for a long, long time in the Big 12, and on and on and on. In the ACC, there's really not a program like that. The worst team in the ACC kind of rotates. Some years it's been all over the place. It's been all over the place. I can't even pick one out because Syracuse has been that team. Then they've gone 10-3 a couple years later. Georgia Tech's gone to ACC championship games, but they were 3-9 last year.
Yeah.
Louisville. It's been all over the place in the ACC. Yeah. It's not one program that's okay. They're always awful. In the Pac-12, most recently, it's been Oregon State's been really bad, but they even bounced back with 5 wins. So anyway, you've got your UTEPs of the world and the Rutgers and the Kansas and all those that are just seemingly always down. Then you've got your elite, and then you've got your little layers in there. We've talked about Notre Dame and Penn State and Michigan in the top 10, the top 15, Auburn, Florida, that are fairly consistent and going 9-3, 10-2 most years. But man, you've got a layer of teams from about 25 to 75 that they pretty much all beat each other.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's going to show up.
And that also, to me, makes the beauty of college sports. I mean, what a way of you're mixing all these different type of races, all these different type of belief systems, these different mindsets on how to do things on and off the field. People from all over the country and now all over the world, people from Australia, from Haiti, Canada, all over playing Division I ball. And then you got to somehow figure out how to put all that together and focus in for one common goal, and that's win a game on a Saturday evening, afternoon, or Friday night, Thursday night sometimes. So I think it's going to be really cool, man, to see how college football continues to evolve. Now, if we win the game versus Pitt, are we going to the national championship game, Mark? No. We just got to win the game on Saturday. Figure it out. How we're going to win it, what we're going to do. And the game plan on Thursday or Wednesday, may not be the same thing that happens after we get in the game and see that they're having. I'll get to that comment, Scorpio King. Can you leave that up for me, Mark? I'll get to that really fast. What we talk about doing on a Thursday or a Wednesday, you get in the game on Saturday and you're like, well, coach, that doesn't work out well. We've been trying it. It doesn't work. They're giving us a different look, offensive or defensive. The biggest thing that a lot of coaches do at the elite level is they make in-game adjustments. Sometimes in-drive adjustments, like, oh, we showed this and they came out in that. Okay, we'll go back to that formation. Give me a call from upstairs. If they still have that same one, we'll change the route as in mid-play. Have you looked to the sideline and boop, 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 boop. All right, change it. Go. Those type of things at the elite level. I mean, you sit and watch Ohio State and Bama and Clemson and Georgia, like even to a certain extent, Notre Dame a little bit. That top 5 to 6, they're just on a different level. And yeah, every offseason we feel like we're on that level, but eventually you're going to start playing the games and see we may or may not be there just yet. Does that mean that fire everybody and everyone sucks and bench this guy and pull that guy's scholarship? No. Okay, we got to calm down. Take a deep breath, Canes fans. Let's take a deep breath. We got a pretty good head coach. We surrounded him with, from what it seems like, a pretty good staff. Are we going to lose a couple more games? In my opinion, yeah, we probably will. But that's just my opinion right now. Once we see these teams week to week, the Pitt team that showed up and played NC State ain't coming down to Miami. It could be better, it could be worse. Depends on how the flow and the energy of the game on Saturday comes. The team that played Louisville and Tallahassee obviously didn't show up to Clemson. So therefore, that means every game is different. How we attack this game and how we make our in-game adjustments is going to be the big difference in the game versus Pitt, because they're no walkover and they're also not Alabama. So they're somewhere in the middle of that. We just got to make plays in the game.
I predicted Miami to go 8-3 this year. There's nothing that I've seen thus far that would move me off of 8-3. But if somebody said Miami's going to finish 10-1, I wouldn't be surprised by that.
It wouldn't be so far out left field, would it?
Not at all. Miami can certainly beat every team on the schedule, but I tend to not necessarily say, well, they're definitely going to lose to that team and definitely lose to that team. Outside of Clemson, there was no team that I thought, I'm almost positive Miami's going to lose to that team. But I just thought with the collection of teams, as we've seen in the past, once you add up the Virginia Techs and the North Carolinas and all those teams, that, okay, there's about 7 teams there Miami could lose to. So I think they'll probably win about 5 of those and lose 2 of them. I'm just making an estimation that seems pretty reasonable.
Always that one swing game, because that's how I look at it now too. It's like, well, I'm not in the building yet, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know what all their preparation is, and I don't know the real energy of it from there. Because I mean, what you see from a TV screen is not always what's happening in a day-to-day basis. And with how the University of Miami now does things, before we used to have a thing called Rising Canes, on Canes All Access. And it would be like these hour-long documentaries of what led up to that week mark. I mean, they would have like 20 minutes from Monday, 10 minutes from Wednesday. They would have like on the plane, riding the bus. I mean, you got to hear the music they were listening to, and the cameras are right in their face. And they were, they'll show huddles and, defensive line, what they were doing right before kickoff. They would show highlights of the game, some sideline. It was like mini documentaries for every game. It was beautiful. But then all of a sudden, Coach Rick comes in and says that that's a distraction to his team, so he cuts it. Excuse me, no. Al Golden says that's a distraction to his team, so he cuts it. And it was so – we were doing this in 2011, and had been doing this since Coach Randy Shannon was here in like 2008. So we were kind of ahead of what everyone else does now. Yeah. I mean, Ohio State, I love sitting and watching those things. Like Chase Young and I – actually had, when he was a freshman, he came down to Fort Lauderdale and trained with my defensive line coach when I was in high school, who's now the strength and conditioning coach at St. Thomas Aquinas. So I know Chase Young. So I've seen him when he was just like skinny, glasses, I want to be a basketball player guy. So quick inside story here. And just to see him like grow into this like mammoth of a dude and just be a beast. Like, of course, if he saw me, he'd be like, what's up, Holloway? But I don't have his number. Like, we're not besties. But I've definitely, if we saw each other, we would clap each other up and ask how you doing and how's life or whatever. But I say all that to say, like, you watch some of these big-time programs, they have weekly It doesn't change the fact that you win or lose because there's a camera around you and you're, a little bit more in-depth on the program. But because we're a private institution, they've changed a lot of those views, man. So hopefully they bring some of that stuff back, but we were far ahead. I bet people in the chat are talking about it. Like Canes All Access had this thing called Rising Canes, and it was just like amazing documentaries. I think they even deleted them all. You can't even go back and watch them, but they used to be like really cool mini weekly documentaries, and we stopped them.
We've got a funny take from Tabardine. I'll get to that in just a second. We'll stay with what's on the screen. Scorpio Kane, Wholesome One. In your breakdown, you were talking about communicating and doing their assignments and trusting the backs to pick up the extra defenders, correct?
Yes. So what I meant by that is there were a couple times on this offensive line where there was a miscommunication between the big on, and like I said, don't know how they call it in this offense. But I know when I played center, there's big on, which meant the offensive line blocks the defensive line. Anyone blitzing is picked up by a tight end or a back. Then there's also the, not necessarily opposite of it, but there's also Ringo and Louie, which means we're going to all step to the right, and whoever comes in this gap, whoever it is, you hit and you block them. Louie, we're all going to take a step to the left. Whoever comes in this gap, you block them. Whether that's when we all slide to the left, that means the running back comes off to the right-hand side and picks up that edge rusher. And the inverse, if we all slide to the right, then the running back goes and picks up the edge off the left. But what was happening in this game is that, and unfortunately, they keyed in on one of our true sophomore offensive linemen who, when it came to picking up the block, he would, depending on who attacked him, instead of picking up a man. So therefore, there was a time where there was a linebacker in his gap, but a defensive lineman right in front of him. And so he would step to the D tackle, but then saw the linebacker came, so that he would jump off of the defensive tackle to try to block the lineman, to block the linebacker. And now the running back is behind him like this, trying to figure out which one he needs to pick up. And they both end up getting to Derek King and sacking Derek King. So it happened a couple times. So that's what I meant as far as communicating as to what we're going to do. Are we going to gap block here? Or are we going to man block and then have the running back pick up whoever the blitzer is? That's what I was illustrating.
So this is pretty good, because at the same time, this is pretty funny that I saw Tabardine comment in the live chat. I was preparing to give the Wholesome One some questions from the comments made to the videos in case we didn't have anything in the live chat. So Tabardine said this in the comments, and then I'll tee it up with his comment that he just made in the live chat. He says, Mark, if you really watched the game, the reason Miami lost was this game was because the holding penalties on Clemson that were never called. Miami and our offensive line played terrible. Okay, if you clowns actually think Clemson beats Miami 42-17, if the reps make the holding calls, then you guys are high. And then he says here, that he says here, everyone is saying how good Clemson was when they were why they were holding every play. I counted 12 to 15 holding penalties. It was so bad. Miami jerseys were hanging off their shoulder pads.
Man, listen, Tabardine, I mean, you're my Hurricanes advocate, and I appreciate it. But I mean, I get it, man. Trust me, when it comes to holding, maybe it's different for a big guy. For a lineman, it's like, yo, if you're using that as an excuse, that means you're losing the game. I mean, if you watch some of these big time offensive defensive linemen go against each other, you don't ever hear them screaming holding. It's like, if you're so dynamic, okay, and you're working a rip move so well as a defensive lineman, if someone's holding you and you're working it that hard and they got to yank you down to the ground, you're obviously going to get that call. And if you don't, you keep forcing, you keep pushing. You don't stop and complain mid-play about holding, or complain afterward. It's something that when it's out of your hands, you let the referees handle that. You let the coaches argue for you. Just like Ed Reed. He literally says the play before with Louis, he's like, watch number 7. He's holding our tight end, right? So we call a seam pattern for Will Mallory. Right down the seam. Their linebacker, number 7, literally whips him around. When he was holding him so hard, he whips him around. And it took Ed Reed saying something for them to even call it out. As soon as they said it, and it's all on audio, they caught him They caught Ed Reed talking to the referee. You can hear Ed Reed say, watch number 7. The very next play, number 7 gets a holding call because of it. Now, if Will Mallory wasn't playing hard enough and he just kept jogging and didn't go hard and the holding still happened, the only reason why he whipped around is because he had so much momentum going in the opposite direction that pulling created him to get whipped around and get the penalty. Okay? As fans, there's nothing we can do about it. I don't think referees tune into our channels and say, hey, you know what? Maybe we do need to start looking at holding versus Miami. Yeah, makes sense. No. You gotta keep pushing and keep playing through it. But yeah, let's be respectful. We don't have to call people clowns or idiots, and it's no need to go that far with it. I understand we all get angry, but what I would say is read your comment back to yourself, and if you think maybe I shouldn't post it, you should edit it a little bit and then post it again.
For anybody out there that believes my analysis is idiotic, I certainly want to hear the feedback. You just don't need to call people idiots and clowns.
No need to do that.
Just make your point. But if you do, it's not like I block you or get rid of you or don't respond, because I do, because I just figure I'm on YouTube. It's part of the game.
It is.
Will Johnson, good to see you. Jordan Bowman, Martin, of course, Malachi Arnold. We got good to see a number of people on the line that I rarely see. So we're hitting you at a different time here with the Wholesome One. So Kyle Smith says, Wholesome, great breakdown of film again, tough to watch. Can we all agree the coaching staff has failed the team yet again? Playing time for certain guys, game planning, game adjustments.
Wow. Man, I think that's a bit rich. I think that's a bit much. And I think that is a result of how bad the game was. Okay. Again, like I said after the game, angry, yes. Disappointed, yes. Overreact, no. Saying that the coaching staff has failed this team, I can't necessarily agree with that. Okay. We're 3-1. Failed the team to me would be 1-3, maybe even 2-2 in losses to teams that eventually we saw are not good teams. What I can say is that Saturday, a little bit of the leadership and the play calling was called to question. But to say that they just failed, do they look ill prepared at sometimes? Yes. But that could be a mixture of big game jitters, away game jitters, all that type of stuff, and being on a stage with such a great team. But to call and say that the coaching staff has failed them, I would have to push back and disagree on that one. Are there some things we got to work on and change? Absolutely. Are we all frustrated? Yes. But failed the team? Nah. I disagree, brother. Disagree.
We talk Miami football on a regular basis. Of course, here at the Miami channel, we get the Wholesome One on the line twice this week from the Wholesome One. So, of course, head on over to his channel, the Wholesome One Holloway, and I'll get the banner up there so you get the spelling right. But it's HOLSUM and the number 1, HOLSUM and the number 1, and subscribe there. We keep the content rolling as long as we get the support from you. So we need you to like the videos, grab that video link, share it on social media. The Wholesome One's got a Twitter. I've got a Twitter, but we only reach so many people. So you guys, you put all of you together in regards to the number of people that you reach on Twitter. If you grab the links from our videos, send them out there on Twitter. Let people know that we cover Miami and college football across the board. And, of course, comment as you do. And we got the Super Chat available as well.
I love that, Frank. I'm confident that our team is going to show up and play pretty well too. I mean, I agree. But hashtag beat Pitt is a thing. That's all we're really focused on. It shouldn't be focused on NC State. We can't be focused on Wake Forest. We can't even be focused on Clemson anymore. ACC championship game, playoff, none of that stuff. We got to be focused on hashtag beat Pitt. And I think that focus is with this team and with this leadership. But I will say, Mark, after watching, if you get some time, go ahead and check out my review on that Clemson game. It does get a little emotional. I got pretty angry watching that game again. But it's an hour-long session, so take your time. You got to go bit by bit. But you see a lot of, man, this dude, Bubba Bolden, man. Whew. Just every single week, every single play. Does he make some mistakes? Yeah. Does he miss some tackles? Of course. Is he out of position? Sometimes. But for the most part, man, we haven't seen consistent playmaking like that in a long time. Now, I'm not going to call and compare him to any other big time, is he Ed Reed, is he Sean Taylor? No, I'm not going to say any of that. He's Bubba Bolden. That's who he needs to be, is himself. But, man, it's really nice to see that type of play to where every single week there's a couple young men that are going to show up. And Bubba Bolden is one of them. Nesta Silvera, I mean, you've heard me talk about him for years now. Me, Cam, whoever comes on has always talked about Nesta, because he's such a vocal guy. But he's starting to make those plays, too, consistently. Every week he made some plays, third on the team in tackles in the game versus Clemson. Couple TFLs. I mean, he played pretty well there, too. Just a couple guys consistently showing up week after week and just doing their thing.
Wholesome One, I'm going to add to Martin's question here because he's asking, Wholesome, do you think we close the gap if we meet Clemson in Charlotte later this season? Of course, he's talking about the ACC championship game. And what I'll add to that, Wholesome One, is let's say this has happened many times in conference championship game history. So the SEC started this whole thing in 1992 with conference championship games, and then the Big 12 jumped on in 1996 and so forth and so on.
They almost blew the whole thing up doing it that time.
Yeah. There's a really good documentary on that.
And it almost ruined the entire AP at the time. But go ahead.
I remember watching the game live. Alabama was undefeated, ranked number 1 in the country, headed toward a national championship game. But the SEC added a game for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons. Money would be at the top of the list or near it. And they almost lost to a 3-loss Florida team that would have knocked them out of the precursor to the BCS championship game. They had a bowl coalition in which they would determine a little bit better than what was done in the past who should be playing who in bowl games. But anyway, Alabama ended up playing, of course, Miami in what was a Sugar Bowl matchup 1 versus 2 for the national championship after getting by Florida on a Antonio Langham pick. Or was that
historic play?
Yes. So I'm going to add to Martin's question in regards to closing the gap on Clemson. And what I was getting to is that there have been all sorts of examples of a team losing to a team in the regular season, coming back in the conference championship game and beating them. But most of those times, it was a very close game in the regular season. Then they rematched in the championship game. So let's say Clemson continues to be Clemson and Miami's a top 15 to 20 team. So we're not necessarily expecting a win, but what would you, in terms of a score gap that it seems like Martin's asking for, but I'm asking more from a what really key indicators would make you feel better? Still wouldn't be happy with a loss, but feel better about the progress of Miami football. What areas would you like to see them close the gap on Clemson first?
Oh, man, just understanding the psyche of the game and really upping the team IQ. There are plenty of times where you watch this film and it's just like misreads by De'Aaron King or horrible angles by this bad linebacking core. Miscommunication and pass protection that could have given De'Aaron King more time to make the plays, man. Just getting a lot more experience in between now and if we ever do make it to the ACC championship game versus them. We would have already played some more teams, got a little bit more confidence in being able to finally look them back in the eye and say, this is it, man. I'm swinging on you with all I got, and I know it's going to be a long match. It's going to be a 60-minute Ironman match. And to me, Mark, we got to figure out our woes on offense because the defense, the more you watch the game, the defense was in the game. Like, they kept us in the game for as long as they could before Travis Etienne finally broke on us with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Because you're down 21, you're down 11 points, and you get the ball. if we had the right offensive game plan and go down and score the touchdown, Mark, that's 17-21. There's a different level of energy and excitement. But because we crossed the 50 one time, because De'Aaron King got missing and didn't even score, he tries to cut back in and spin instead of just run to the end zone. It really affected all of what we brought to the table, man. So you ask about a score. I would love if we were able to pull it within 10. I don't know if we're ready to beat a program like that just yet, especially because of the different level of coaching. You know, because we could even jump out to an early lead, but the way that they have their program set up, it wouldn't be a shocker if they came back down 17 to a team like Miami, where we are right now. Okay. And that may be unpopular in the Canes universe, but that's okay. It's just true. They're on a different level psyche. They're on a different level in production and developing players. And they've gotten to the point where for years they were like top 15, top 20 recruiting. They have the number 4 evaluated roster in college football. That's scary. You match what they have been doing in developing people with now the 5-star recruits to the level of the Bama and Georgias. It may not be any easier for us.
Yeah, I know, because I think one of the prime recruiting classes in those 20 and 15 national championship game and national championship teams, they had like a 13th rated recruiting class in there that turned out to be a stud, just loaded class. And I don't think we need to guess who the top 4, when you mentioned top 4 recruiting classes, I don't think we even need to take much of a guess because they're pretty clear cut.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson, right?
Exactly. And Georgia's finally getting that. I mean, they are literally the most talented team in college football if you go by the 5 stars. Now, if you equate the 5 to 4 star, Alabama has a slight edge because they have a little bit more higher rated 4 stars than Georgia has 4 stars. But Georgia has the most 5 stars on a roster and just added the number 2 offensive tackle in the country. You know, so people, it's hard, man. It's hard having these conversations and this fan base sometimes, Mark, because people don't understand we're not on that even level of recruiting, let alone that level of player development once they walk through the door. But you got teams where there's 5 stars riding the pine because they just can't beat out who's ahead of them. Not riding the pine because of seniority issues and favoritism issues, which is what I think we have a problem with at Miami, is that their starters starting just because they're older. Then their starters starting just because that's the coach's favorite player, not the fact that they actually win battles. And that's what's really bothering me about our program and our culture right now.
You were talking about laying it on the line and it possibly being unpopular with Miami fans. If you want to see somebody who's unpopular at times, it's this guy right here, Frank the Legendary right here. So Frank the Legendary, I have a lot of respect for you because in addition to the comment that he just posted, he just sent a super chat, which I will post to the screen. So we appreciate the support so much. I always want to know when somebody makes a comment like that. He says, I don't like you anymore, but I will always support you. I would love to know why. I just want to know why. I'm not going to change my approach because of that. What I'm guessing is that I said some negative things about Miami. So I always do my very best to cut it straight across the board, and I make it very plain. I don't root for Miami. I don't root against Miami. I truly don't. And I just pretty much call it as is. And if anything, for those people that were upset when I picked Miami to lose last week, I know a lot of people were upset about that I was suddenly a hater because I picked Miami to lose a game. I reminded them that I picked Miami to go 8-4 last year and they went 6-6. I picked them to go 9-3 the year before. They went 7-5. So I just call the games the way I see it. And in regards to my respect for Miami football down through the years, I'll say it very succinctly like this. I think that Miami has most likely fielded in singular years some of the greatest football teams in the history of football. I've stated that many times. 2001, on and on and on, a number of years. They have the most unique dynasty or elite status in college football because, as Cam has phrased it, the microwave dynasty, and that's what it is. They heated up in the early 80s, culminate with the championship in 83. They're really good throughout the 80s. They peak between like 88 and 92 with some of the most dominant teams ever. They get hit with NCAA sanctions. It knocks them back for a few years. Butch Davis comes in. He raises them up to championship level. And from 2001, 02, 03, again, they're right there. They win a national championship. They could have won 2 or 3 more, but that's what it was. And since then, though, in the last 15 years, they've been a marginal program. I'm sorry. They have won 57% of their games over the last 15 years. And if you want to, that equates to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has a better winning percentage in the last 15 years than Miami does. And they didn't win a bowl game for like 11 years. And they haven't finished in the top 10.
Christ, Mark.
They didn't. I'm just speaking the facts. It's so
this is a Miami channel, and this is a Miami show, and you're just like,
Well, just the last 15 years have not been pretty.
Goodness gracious.
It's not like Rutgers bad. It's not bad, but it's not pretty. It's been
well,
it's
we're gonna win Saturday, so that's fun.
You should win Saturday.
We should win Saturday.
And the recruiting footprint's right there to make it all happen again. It's right there. I don't know what to say.
I just couldn't. I mean, you just kept going, just like, yeah. Bow,
I could have kept going further than that. I just keep referring to the video I posted about 6-7 months ago that really hit the Wholesome One hard because I just laid it out there. So I was just kind of going back through those numbers and stuck with me.
Mark. Oh man, I'm glad I didn't call you after I first watched that video. I was very angry. I couldn't believe you just decided, you know what, I'm going to wake up and take shots at Miami today. Hit record and just go in on our program. And like, I mean, you go back and watch it. I mean, a lot of what you said is true. I think about 90% of what you said is true. Is there context to what you said that you left out? Absolutely. But I mean, only people who are close to the program and overanalyze the program would know a lot of that stuff. Some of it is blatantly obvious as far as the sanctions and deliberately not hiring the right coaches and just going after the borderline person as opposed to the elite hire because you don't really want to be good at football, because you don't want to be known as a football school. You want to be known as a medical school that cured cancer. You know, that's what they want to be known as. They don't want to be known as a football school. So just make sure you add that in next time you go on your long soliloquy anti-Miami.
I was just spitting out facts.
Okay.
It wasn't anti-Miami. Basically, I just get inundated with elite. And see, I can go with this whole elite status from 2 different perspectives.
Okay.
One would be that if you root for Texas, you can say, we're elite, we'll always be elite, we're elite. And I would say, okay, well, you're not elite right now, but I get the fact that you believe you're elite and you can stay elite. And because of that status of Texas football, you always consider you're elite. You can lose 5 games every year for the next 10 years. And I'll still give you that. I'm not stating that my opinion and perspective is perfect. I'm just stating that it's a perspective. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to say you're elite, but the results on the field don't back that up, but you've been elite in the past and you just want to hang on to that, I've got no problem with that. And so if any Miami fan wants to say our program's elite, I have no issue with that. I'm just clarifying that elite status is tied to the past. It is not based on the current results. That can be argued.
I pray no one is coming on and saying anything about us being elite.
I see it all the time. That's what I was responding to when I cut that video.
Man, that hurts.
But I get that. As an Ohio State fan, if we went into the tank for 5 years, or we're marginal like Miami for 15 years, part of me would still say, well, we're elite. We're Ohio State. Look at the history. We're elite. But so there can be a distinction made between what's your history versus are you elite right now? The wins and the losses tell us who is elite right now.
But yeah, I mean, hey, I say this much. I think when my whole thing, especially on channels, and I think any channel that I'm on, I think we all share this same viewpoint. When you have a platform like this that's so public, and you're putting your face on the screen, and even if you were to have a podcast and you put your opinions out there, you do call-in shows like I do, and you actually allow people to hop on screen with you and have this platform and speak. So what happens is, I think any opinion is valued, but can you back up your opinions with evidence to solidify where you're getting that viewpoint from, that opinion from? And obviously, you just went on a soliloquy that explained where we are as a program. That's not saying that we're going to stay there. That's not saying that we used to be that. You're just saying that for this amount of point or time that you want to go through, we didn't live up to or didn't do this or were that. It's just that simple. I don't think anything you said was wrong. Do I have to necessarily like it? No. But what you said is true. I'm hoping that we can have a better decade this decade than we had last, because the previous decade before that started out really good at the early end of it, but by the end of it, we were kiltering down to accepting 9-4. If you talk about 2000 through 2009, technically, that decade there. Now if you talk about 2010 through 2019, there was a whole bunch of sporadics. Hoping 2020 is a little bit more consistent and that we can build something. I think one thing about our program is that we have an opportunity and the ability to kind of jump to the front of the line. Some teams it takes them 5 years to build a program.
Yes. That is one point I believe I made in that video, was that if you take all those teams that have played at Miami's level in the last 15 years, and again, it's 57% winning percentage. So I don't remember who that was. Kansas State, Stanford, whoever it was the mid-tier of the Power Fives. Miami stuck out as the team, the program that has the potential to make that leap because of the talent in the area. Those other teams, those other programs have a big challenge, a big mountain to climb to go get talent.
So, I mean, like I said, some people it takes time to build them in and build this layer, and then now that layer goes up to another year, and now you got these freshmen in that are competing with those good sophomores, and now those sophomores become juniors, those first come sophomores, bring in more. It takes a little time for some other teams. With Miami, you can do it with, you look at that 2008 team that played the eventual national champions in the Florida Gators. With 3 minutes or 4 minutes left in that game, they're down 9-6 to the eventual national champions, and no one on that team under Coach Randy Shannon's second year as a head coach, and no starter was a 3-year player or higher. It was all redshirts. Well, it was all redshirt sophomores, true sophomores, freshmen, and redshirt freshmen contributing for that team. Now, you got to do it on a more consistent basis and put it out through an entire season, is all I'm saying. And then be able to continuously build on that. And to me, the other half of recruiting that we've been failing at, Mark, to me, it's a two-part thing. Recruiting is adding people to your roster and also keeping the young men who are on your roster who have the ability to go to the NFL to stay. We have not done that half either, because every junior who thinks he's somewhat good and an agent get in his ear, he just leaves. They don't stay and help build and contribute to the team. They just up and leave us. So we got to fix that part too.
Speaking of time, Wholesome One, I'll keep you on here as long as you can. You just let me know when we need to cut you loose, and we'll get through the comments and the questions in the live chat as quickly as we can. But you just let me know if you got to cut loose right now or if you want to keep going.
I would love to, but I actually do got to get to a meeting in 5 minutes. So
absolutely,
if we can close out here, that would be pretty good. Unfortunately, I love you guys. Trust me, but I do got a personal life I got to keep up.
Absolutely. Wholesome One, we appreciate you stopping by. And again, subscribe on his YouTube channel, Wholesome One Holloway, and join him right there. All right. Very good, Wholesome One. Appreciate it. We'll see you hopefully next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So, around this afternoon time, y'all can look to see me. Make sure you swing over to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at _Holloway, Holloway __52, or just type in the host one Holloway. That'll pop up too. I'm really active on there. Pretty funny on there too. Political sometimes, but mostly Canes. And, come and swing by and say what's up to. Appreciate everybody that donated. Thank you so much, Mark, for having me on the channel and giving me the stage, man. God bless y'all, and go Canes, and #beat Pitt.
Yeah, we got this final contribution coming in from Eddie. Wholesome One will let you go. I'll answer anything else on the live chat here. Eddie, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. I think some fans are in their feelings over your opinion of the turnover chain. Hopefully it didn't have to do with the turnover chain. So anyway, because I've got nothing against the turnover chain, and it's fun, and I just don't pay attention to things like that. I watch the football on the field, and I could care less about stuff like that. But we had Zoe on to explain the origin of the turnover chain. So if there's one thing you almost have to give me credit for is anytime there's any kind of criticism or controversy, I'll meet it head on. We had a race relations discussion sometime back in March or May, whenever it was at its worst in regards to what we were seeing in the country and athletes speaking out. I thought, let's get this out in the open. Let's talk about it regarding the turnover chain. Again, I said some things. People didn't like it. I thought they were pretty harmless. Then again, what did I do? I brought Zoe on because he talked about the origin of the chain, what it means to the Miami fan base and the people of South Florida. Great. I attack it head on every time. So, yeah, I found an interesting quote from Nick Saban this week about defensive play, and I was going to serve that up to the Wholesome Bun, but we will keep that under wraps for right now. I'm going to dive through the live chat, see if there's anything else that you guys have for me. Oh, boy. I don't even know where we were. See if there was anything in here regarding anything we talked about. Brother James says, when comparing two schools, the overall measure is a national title, period. I don't agree with that, but we can all have our own opinion because I think that's very shallow, and national championships are determined by the people selecting who should play in the national championship game. Let's all understand that it's not an objective playoff system in college football. It's not the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, or the NFL, where there's an objective system to determine who makes the playoffs. People select who is in the playoffs. So give me a year, and I will tell you why it's a disputed national championship. But it's certainly a measurement. It's a measurement. I think it should be considered a measurement. And I certainly, if I get to it this off season, which I'm going to have a whole lot more time to dive into these type of scenarios and situations, and these type of debate topics would be to rate the all-time greatest college football programs, and national championships would be a measurement, not the measurement. In the NFL, it's hard to argue with, here are the Super Bowl champions over the last, it's been 55 years, because it's an objective criteria. The national championships are not. Chris Bradford, from an elite perspective, a couple questions need to be asked. What have you done in the modern era? That includes pre-BCS, whatever the modern era is. Again, Chris, I appreciate your first point about the modern era, but the modern era is different for everyone. I've got 20-year-olds that come on here and talk about the modern era being in the last 10 years. Think that something that happened in 2003 was like ancient history. We have other people that consider whatever era to be their lifetime. So we got 58-year-olds arguing with 23-year-olds, with 32-year-olds, and people bring their perspective based on their lifespan. Have you ever sustained a decade or more of excellence and relevance? Again, define excellence and relevance. Some people think 10-2 is excellent. Other people say that's trash. We've had dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people in the live chat and in the comments section point out teams that go 10-2 and call them trash, let alone excellent or relevant. So you got to define these terms. I cut a video and posted it recently, I would say in the last 6 months. You should dig this one up. Basically, what I did is I took all the current elite or all-time elite programs, including Miami. So I should get a pat on the back from that, from Miami fans. Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Tennessee, USC, Clemson, maybe some others. And I basically, Chris, thank you. I'm glad that you watched that. And so basically, I took it from another stance. I was basically determining when was the last time these particular programs were down. So, because I keep hearing that term too, Chris, and I appreciate your comment there, Chris. I am giving all due respect to that comment. I'm just saying that those things would need to be defined. And I know you only have so many characters to make your statement there. So basically what I did was, because this is another one, like the terms excellence and being on top and being elite and being relevant and being down, those are all terms that get thrown around all over the place in college football. Well, what do they mean? Okay, so I was looking at all these elite programs or anybody that could be considered or was considered elite, and when was the last time they were down? Now, in comparison to being elite, I would say that Miami's down right now. I would say that they've been down since 04-05, because when you win 57% of your games and you never finish in the top 10 for 16 years, when 43 other schools have, that's being down. So it's not too difficult to determine with Miami. When was the last time they were down? Well, they're down now, and they only had a couple little blips, and one was 2017 for 10 weeks. And then by the end of the year, they were number 13 and 10-3, and that's a good season, but it's not anything close to elite. Okay. So for example, what I defined as down was that a team did not compete for a conference championship, seriously compete for a conference championship, and I had to define that. And I defined that by saying that a team was competing for a conference championship by being in the race for the conference championship, being in contention the final weekend of the season. So when was the last time somebody was down? So if a team's humming along, if Georgia's humming along going 11-1 every year, then all of a sudden they go 7-5 one year and they're back up to 11-1, 11-1, 11-1. I don't consider that as being a down period in football, because that was only 1 year. So I go through all the videos. I went through all the programs, and hopefully you guys can dig that up, because I think it's a good video in regards to sparking the conversation about when different programs were down. Florida State's down right now. Texas is down. USC down, but not to the extent that those other ones have been. They just won a Rose Bowl. They just won a Pac-12 championship just a couple of years ago. Jalil Johnson, plus I want to know how many seasons of 10-plus wins Miami has in a row. Well, right now they got 0. As in the past, it's very easy to look those things up. Here we go. Eddie. This is Eddie's definition. And again, these are just personal definitions, and I think most of them are valid. Excellence and relevance is winning 10-plus games a year, winning the conference or winning a New Year's Six Bowl, making the playoffs every other year, and, of course, winning a natty every once in a while. So based on that definition, I would say that, well, Georgia's not won a national championship in forever, 1980. But they meet the other criteria. The only teams that meet that criteria is pretty much Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma. Again, once you throw the national championship into the mix, Oklahoma's not won one of those since 2000. Maybe LSU, since they've won national championships in 03, 07, and of course last year, but they don't really hit they don't hit the 10 plus games a year. LSU, outside of last year and the year before, post 2011, after they went to the BCS championship game and were embarrassed by Alabama, then they were down to going 8-4, 9-3 every year. Jordan mentioning a lot harder to win a title in those days. Making a New Year's Six bowl was rare, even for the top programs. Don't know what that's referring to. We got Frank the Legendary. And again, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. I'm doing this full-time, full throttle all the time. The job's gone. So we need to turn this into revenue. All right. Frank says, Mark, when there's a hint of Miami being back, the needle moves nationally. We're the talk of the nation, love or hate. Well, I don't know if you're the talk of the nation. A lot of teams are the talk of the nation. Of course, you got to remember that you're in a silo. You're in an echo chamber. You talk to Miami fans all the time. Of course, you're back. So I think that's true to a certain extent. That could be said about not a lot. That could be said of other programs moving the needle. If you look at the 10 highest rated television games every year, they're mostly the Big Ten and the SEC. They're almost exclusively. The last 2 years have been SEC and Big Ten games. And then who plays in those games? Well, it's not Illinois and Rutgers and Maryland and Vanderbilt and Kentucky. It's Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, Michigan. Those are the teams playing in those games. So if you're talking about who watches the games on TV, there we got Chris. The character limitation is the hardest part because I'm so ready to go in depth. Being down definitely can't last past multiple recruiting classes passing through. Miami has officially fallen a tier or two. So there's a Miami fan, I believe a Miami fan, I shouldn't say that for sure, commenting on where he thinks Miami football is. I have no issue with any Miami fan saying we're an elite program, but that has to be tied to the past. That's all I'm saying. That's like I don't have an issue with a USC or Texas fan saying we're elite. And I would say, well, that's based on history. It's not based on what's going on right now because Texas is losing to the likes of TCU and losing 5 games a year. And so is Miami, and so is USC. Are they historic programs? Yes. Florida State is awful. Florida State is now what? Add up 7-6, 5-7, 6-7, 1-3. Whatever that is, it's about 5 games under 500. That's not even marginal. That's not even, these results aren't anywhere close to Iowa, Michigan State, Louisville. Yeah, it's always a fascinating breakdown of the top programs in the country and where programs should be ranked and are ranked. Robert Reed, 95% of football fans didn't even know Clemson won in like 81. That's how long it's been until they got back on track. Okay, Robert Reed, first of all, I can't be responsible for people's ignorance as football fans. Now, at the same time, I don't expect everyone to know everything. Again, understand that your statement is based on your own perspective. So for some people, 1981 is not that long ago. To some people, it's ancient history. So I'm sure that if that number was not 81, if it was 91, maybe you'd have a different mindset. If it was 2001, you'd have a different mindset for sure. So where's that magic year? I always love people when they cut off national championship consideration at, well, anything before 1980 doesn't count. Anything before 1990 does. Oh, why? I understand that there's that they could be less considered as they go back into time, but why is there some kind of cutoff? I had somebody argue with me the other day, and this is a completely asinine and ridiculous statement, that they were cutting off anything to be considered after 1980. All considerations for anything had to be after 1980. And I said, well, I was watching football in 1980. I was watching it before 1980 and then after 1980. And there's absolutely nothing to distinguish that 1980 is suddenly some different brand of football or the modern age of football. That's just because you just picked a random year and it just was an even number. Oh, here we go. Martin, what is your opinion on Miami's recruiting top 10 class after a 6 and 7 season? I've said it a few times that it's impressive. Now, you don't want to be the team that has recruited the best class for a non-winning team. So Miami has that distinction in the 2020 recruiting class to have selected and signed the best class of any team that had a losing record the year before. Of course, you don't want that distinction for long. I think it speaks to Manny Diaz's energy and ability to connect with players. I think it speaks to the recruiting in the area. Miami's never going to drop off in recruiting that much, or it would be a complete slam to the program if Miami was bringing in the 45th best class in the country with all the talent in the area. And that's why I throw up my hands when I look at Miami's records over the last 15 years. And also why Miami can take its level of play, which is basically Miami has been 7-5 every year since 2004 or 5. And what I mean by that is if you take the composite record for Miami and you break it down to a season, it's 7-5. It's almost exactly 7-5 for the last 15 years. That's what the program has been: 7-5, 7-5, 7-5. Yes, they've gone 10-2 and 5-7, but if you even it all out, it goes to 7-5. And so the difference between Miami at 7-5 for 15 years and every other program that we could put on that same level, who would that be in the last 15 years? Louisville? Iowa's better than that. Michigan State, much better than that. Maryland, maybe not quite as good. Kansas State has certainly been much better than that at times, but maybe Kansas State's on that level. Stanford was really good for 6-8 years, of course, under David Shaw and Jim Harbaugh. Who else would be on that plane? Arizona State. Anyway, you take one of those schools. Pitt's 7-5 all the time. You take any of those schools, what does Miami have that they don't have? Well, recruiting. It's not even close the advantage Miami has in recruiting over Pitt, Kansas State, some of the other schools I mentioned that have won at the same level. Just got to make it happen. Jalil Johnson, again, I see what you're saying, but your statement has no foundation in any kind of logic. Pitt's Natties came in old era, non-modern football. In my opinion, those Natties shouldn't count. They should only count 1980s and up, maybe 1970s. So which is it? Is it the 1980s, meaning 1980? That's there was some magical thing that happened that in 1979 that football, they were playing with leather helmets and they were basically scrums and they were like Yeah. They were not throwing forward passes in 1979. Suddenly in 1980, boop, modern football. It makes no sense. You're just picking up. Why not 83? How about 87? How about 72? You can pick any year. It doesn't make any sense, though. Maybe the 70s. The only distinction that you could make to say, boom, let's try to find a year to distinguish why football matters more after that. You know, the only distinction? Desegregation. That's really the only one. And even that's all over the place and came to different conferences and different areas of the country and different schools at different times. Jalil, and the Natty Chips have the stats to prove why they won, right? Okay, I don't know what that's about. That's probably a conversation with somebody else. It's not easy. You give me a year, and I will give you every reason in the book why that year has nothing distinguished about it versus the year before. You couldn't even say, you said the 80s. Well, that's a 10-year span. And then you said maybe the 70s. You don't even know. Jalil, so you're not even firm on your point. So present your point to me when you even get it clarified in your mind first. You might want to take that step to clarify the point in your mind first. Yeah, you can call sometime and debate it. We're not going to do that right now. Absolutely. Got call-in shows all the time. I'm on the phone here doing call-in shows all week, all the time. So we will talk about it. There's really nothing to debate because you haven't. I don't know. You've thrown out like 15 years of time. So once you get it confirmed in your mind, you know, it would be great to debate it, but I want you to give it a lot of thought because you may want to be ready for the debate. All right. We've got Arsenio. I hate when people outside the Miami fan base and sports analysts on TV ask if Miami is back as soon as we go on a little win streak. It's aggravating. You will never hear that from me. You will not hear that from me. Martin, 1971, Alabama forced to integrate after USC walloped them, but Big Ten and Pac-8 were integrated in the 50s and 60s. Exactly. It's like a lot of debates in life, it's more complicated than just picking a year and saying, we're going to count national championships starting in 1980, especially since I started a series last offseason where I was tearing apart national championship seasons all over the place. They're easy to pick apart. We've got Colorado running around with the national championship after losing 2 games and having a 5th down awarded to them to win another game. So there you go. Brother James, in my opinion, you say, why have bowl games? Okay. Whew. Don't know what that is. All right, everyone. Appreciate you stopping by. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, share the videos on social media to keep us alive. If you want us to keep doing this, we will. Here on the Miami channel and otherwise. Thank you for the contribution and your support. See you next time.